Delighted to say that joining me today, I haven't seen him for a little while, journalist and broadcaster Benjamin Butterworth. Morning.
Good morning, Julia.
Looking very dashing today, if you don't mind me
as
saying,
are you,
sir.
as always.
Oh, darling. Oh, thank God for a trowel full of makeup, eh? That's all I can say. Shabana Mahmood, you're a lefty liberal. Although you talked a lot of sense on quite a lot of things lately, so it makes me wonder whether he's coming over to our side. Gradually, the facts will win them over, folks. But Shabana Mahmood, people are saying she's very impressive. She hasn't done anything yet. She hasn't done anything other than, as Justice Secretary, release a load of criminals onto the streets. So when the prisons were over full. So we have to wait and see whether she can turn words into actions. But she's had to defend her plan to deport failed asylum seekers, including families with children. What do you make of her plans, as what we know about them so far? We haven't seen the bill yet, the Act of Parliament. She's got to get it through. What do you make of the criticisms of her from the left, from the right? Doesn't go far enough, goes too far. What do you make of it?
I mean, I think, this is the biggest rewriting of our asylum rules in generations, if not, more than a generation. And so it's quite significant. The idea that you don't have the automatic right to bring your family here as an asylum seeker, that you can every 30 months be reassessed whether you're sent back to your home country. So Syria, for example, which has become safe quite unexpectedly. You could see lots of safer. I mean, I've been to Syria. It's a beautiful country. I think many Syrians would quite like to go back that came here. So, I think it's a good idea. I also think that, you mentioned the criticism from the left. So the Green Party MP, Carla Denyer, was saying that it was stoking division, and so did a Liberal Democrat MP, which, as you mentioned at the top of the show, Shabana Mahmood was very angry about, because she said, she knows racist division better than any of those people lecturing her.
Shall we play a little clip of that before you carry on? And obviously edited. Have you got kids listening? This is what Shabana Mahmood had to say on basically the idea that, stoking division. This was actually to a white Lib Dem shadow Home Office minister, a white man. This is what Shabana Mahmood had to say.
Unfortunately, I am the one that is regularly called a told to go back home. It is I who knows through my personal experience and that of my constituents just how divisive the issue of asylum has become in our country. And I do say to him, I wish it were possible to say that there isn't a problem here, that there's nothing to see, and that it is all in fact just extremist right-wing talking points. But this system is broken, and it is incumbent on all members of Parliament to acknowledge how badly broken the system is.
It's interesting, though, isn't it, Benjamin, that Shabana Mahmood is almost saying we have to do something about it because I've received racist abuse, as have many other people of colour, called an effing P word. I'm not saying words. She got rebuked, actually, in the Parliament. You're not supposed to use that language, even if you're quoting someone else in Parliament. But she's almost saying, well, because there's all this division, that's why we need to act. But basically, she's kind of blaming the racists for why we need to deal with the asylum system, isn't she? But no, we need to deal with the asylum system because it's unfair to have a load of people who've got no right to be in this country being in this country. Isn't that? That's got nothing to do with whether someone calls her a horrible, nasty, abusive, racist slur.
Well, I think she was saying two things. One is that she didn't want to be lectured on what division looks and feels like by people who've probably never been on the receiving end of it. She knows.
I'm called a gammon. Does that count?
She,
not bad, is it?
I've called you worse. So
on air.
Yeah. So she was saying about how she doesn't want to be lectured by those people, because when you have these kind of divisions in society, the people that are on the harshest end of it are people that look like Shabana Mahmood. Yeah. So she understands what the question is. I think the second part she was saying is not that the racists are determining the policy in some way, but that if you don't resettle how we deal with asylum seekers, then you will break the consensus for a generation. Yeah. And so you have to change what the government is doing, what the country is doing. Otherwise, you're going to get a situation where people don't want to help or take anybody, which I think, certainly people like Shabana Mahmood don't want to end up there.
We are totally in that scenario now. I mean, JK yesterday took a call from, a voicemail from a woman called Sarah, and they played it out again today. And it's very, very clear. I mean, she's like, I'm done. I've had enough. People, I don't care anymore. I don't care. And that's the point. When I read stories now about, X number of asylum seekers on a dinghy in the Channel have died, and I don't want anyone to die. And we absolutely need to rescue people in that scenario because we are civilised human beings. But I don't really care. You're in a safe country, and you've chosen to take this absurdly risky situation. If you're putting a kid on those boats, as far as I'm concerned, you need to be prosecuted for putting your child at risk. But I don't care. It's just not my problem anymore. I just don't see why the whole of the first world needs to take on all the problems of the third world, and it's our problem. Because fundamentally, and especially the left insisting we do that, the left are the ones who say, oh, don't get involved in things going on in the third world. Don't. We should take everyone from Syria, but we absolutely shouldn't protect them from being bombed by Assad when he was in power in the Syrian war. And they voted in Parliament against us taking action and getting involved. I just have so little time for it. And I just think most people in the West, and we're seeing this across Europe, seeing it in America, and frankly we're going to be seeing it across other countries when they start seeing the serious same numbers of asylum seekers from, or let's face it, illegal economic migrants coming from godforsaken basket case countries who do not share our culture and have no intention of coming here and assimilating and making a contribution. That they are going to just go, pull up the drawbridge, build the walls higher, put barbed wire on the top, nobody in, nobody out, end of. And that is, I think, where we're going to go.
I mean, I do think we have a responsibility. We have a moral responsibility
to who?
To people that are in the most heinous conditions, that have been through incredible traumas of war.
That's about 3 billion people.
Right.
How many of them are we going to take?
But this is the point, right? So yet there has to be a consensus and agreement
on who will
on
take.
How many.
Right. So every single woman and girl in Afghanistan, right? Every single man who's been conscripted to this army in Eritrea. Who else are we going to take? Everybody?
There's a lot of people in
Every
Khartoum
persecuted
and Sudan.
Christian in Nigeria. How many do we take?
But of course we can't take everybody.
So who do we take? We just choose the young men who've paid the people smugglers? Who do we take?
No, but I think the idea that we shouldn't take anybody when people have put their lives at risk to get here.
This is my thing, and I've asked people on the left. I remember asking Yvette Cooper this when long before she was Home Secretary, and again she stopped coming on the show. What a surprise! But it's really, really simple. Give me a number. Is it 10,000? Is it 100,000?
Well, I would say 100,000.
Is it 500? 100,000.
Yeah.
That's a year.
Yeah.
We take 100,000 people from these countries a year.
Well, I think at the moment we take something like 120,000.
Yeah, it's too many.
So that would be less. But the question is about being able to vet them, about being able to assess them, about being able to integrate them. And one of the
can't integrate 100,000 people a year.
Well, you
can't, because no country's been able to do it. Look, tell me a country in the world that's been able to do that.
One of the big problems is that when people arrive in this country or other European countries, they often are surrounded only by people from their own background. There's an activist I know called Luai Ahmed, who's from Yemen. He's a gay man who went to Sweden. He's now a Swedish citizen. But he often talks about how when he arrived in Sweden, he was surrounded by people more radical than those he was with in Yemen, and there was no integration by Swedish society. Now, he clearly has integrated heavily to European culture, and he's a great defender of it. But he speaks about that problem. And so I think that is an issue to resolve.
But you can't stop those ghettos growing.
Is immoral.
You can't stop those going. No, but I think that's where we're going, because how do we decide? But 100,000, the idea that our country should take 100,000 people every single year from the war-torn or basket case kleptocratic corrupt governments is absurd. I'm sorry, the British people simply won't have it. And if you're saying they're the legal ones, there will still be the illegal ones, because the idea that most of these young fighting-age men who are getting on the dinghies are going to go, oh, well, I'll go through the legal route. Well, they're not the ones who are going to get in on the legal route, so they'll still be coming too. So then we're going to end up with 220,000 a year.
But for many of these countries,
it's not going to fly.
There isn't a legal route into the UK.
Because we don't want them.
If you're fleeing Sudan, which is the worst crisis in the world right now, there is no legal route unless you come across, obviously it's not legal, but it's the route they will use across the channel. And so saying that they came illegally, well, they're not illegal. There is no other option.
Do you remember Syria in 2015, when we were talking about absolutely dire straits, and lots of Europe, Angela Merkel in Germany went, yep, open the doors, come on in. They ended up, 1 million extra people. By the way, the unemployment rate, the crime rate, you just off the scale. Absolute disaster for Germany. That's partly fueled the AfD's rise, and quite understandably. But you're in this scenario where this country, David Cameron said, we'll take 5,000 a year. We'll take 20,000 in total refugees from Syria, 5,000 a year over 4 years, and that's what we'll take. Castigated in the media. The Liberal Democrats, the Labour Party, Green, everyone absolutely outraged by this. The media class horrified by this. When they did a poll, the majority of Britons said that was the right number, or most said it was too many. The British people don't want these people here, and they don't for very sensible reasons. They know they're not going to make a contribution, they know they're not going to integrate, they know they're not going to assimilate, and they know they're going to end up costing us lots of money and causing problems, and they're right.
I think that's completely wrong. And actually the story of Britain in the last 80 years is that we have often taken people as refugees and they've integrated very effectively to our society. You know, our story of taking in Jewish refugees is one that most European countries do not have. We did it, and it was a great work.
Europeans fleeing the Nazis is rather different from taking in people with a completely alien culture.
But hang on, so you say that we shouldn't take anybody in. So you say...
Why taking Ukrainians is very popular.
But hang on, this is my point. You say we shouldn't take anybody in as a refugee.
No,
so
I'm not saying we shouldn't take anybody. I'm saying that's where the British public are. We don't want it. We're done.
So
we're done.
You want to turf out the, I don't know how many Ukrainians who are in Britain right now.
They're not refugees. They're actually on a specific scheme.
But I mean, they are refugees.
No, they're on a very specific scheme where when Ukraine war ends, they go home. That is the actual basis of the scheme. It's a legally...
But they're still here, and they'll be probably here for quite some years yet, sadly. Those are numerous, far more numerous than Afghan refugees we've taken in the last 3 or 4 years. And so,
have we seen a massive issue with lack of integration and you know, and extremist plots and terrorists? No, I don't think we have. But Funny that. I wonder why.
You think a middle-class, educated Ukrainian has less of a right to refuge than someone who risked their life with Allied forces in Afghanistan against the Taliban, who worked with Britain?
The people who worked with our forces, I think that there's support from the British people for those who worked as interpreters and worked to help save the lives of our British forces. Absolutely, absolutely.
But people now are saying that we shouldn't take any Afghans because they do have disproportionate crime rates.
They're saying
and so that means
no one has said that we shouldn't take Afghan interpreters.
They are, absolutely. If you say no refugees, that's precisely what you're saying.
That's not, because
they would be refugees.
That's a different scheme.
So
it's a different scheme. It's not people who just randomly turn up on a boat.
I'm afraid I think it is inherently racist to say that we should take people from Kiev, we should take people from Ukraine, which, you know, I'm not saying we shouldn't, we should, but the idea that someone in Khartoum, the capital of Sudan, in the worst genocide in the world, should not be able to have any possibility of help is wrong.
There's a specific argument about taking people from Europe, a nearby country, allies, and taking them on a temporary basis. And people who are thinking, look, here's the thing, we can't take everyone from Sudan, can we? Can't take everyone from Eritrea, can't take everyone from Somalia. The vast majority of those people go to neighbouring countries. Why can't the people who come here also go to those neighbouring countries? Because the vast majority of people who have fled those wars are now safe. They're not in great conditions. And I know, and that's awful. I would suggest that one of the reasons why people want to come to this country is because we are a country that has fought over the centuries and over the decades of the last 125 years to actually keep our country safe, to defend our values, to extend our freedoms, to make our country stronger and better. And men and women, but mostly men, have gone to the trenches, gone to the front lines and laid down their lives to fight for our country to be where it is. I would suggest some of those men might be better off, actually their country would be better off, if they stayed and fought for their countries and fought for democratic rights, economic stability, fought against the tyrants and actually defended their own country, rather than going, I'm going to leave the women and the children and the elderly and I'm going to sod off to Britain and make a new life for myself. Maybe those aren't the people we want. Going out on a limb there, Benjamin.
I don't think famine-ridden, frail men and women in Darfur being slaughtered in an ethnic cleansing have much option to realistically fight.
Would you stay and fight?
Well, they don't have much ability to fight when they have no access to money, to food, to weapons. So how do they fight? And of course, 2/3 of the world's refugees go to neighbouring countries.
Yeah, exactly. So why do we need to take the others if they can go to neighbouring countries?
The country that's taken the most refugees is Jordan.
Most of the countries that are basket cake countries, it's not because they were colonised, it's not because of any nasty thing the West has done. It is largely because they have got completely corrupt, kleptocratic or lunatic religious governments. I'm sorry. I wish they didn't. I'm actually very supportive of the sort of the Bush doctrine, this idea that you go in and you actually liberate people from, the likes of the Saddam Husseins and whatever. It doesn't tend to work out very well for those people, though. Getting rid of Gaddafi, getting in Libya, getting rid of Saddam Hussein in Iraq or wherever, it tends not to work out very well. Maybe we can't solve all the world's problems, but maybe, you know what? Maybe it's not our responsibility. Maybe solving all the problems in Africa and all the problems in the Middle East where they don't directly impact on us isn't actually our responsibility. And maybe those people should be responsible for their own countries. That's an option.
On the question of going in, I mean, I've been to many of the countries we're talking about.
You are very well travelled.
And one of the surprising things, when I was in Iraq this time last year, I wondered, as a Brit and with what happened in the war in Iraq in 2003, would they hate us? Actually, they were far more animated debated about the failure when ISIS was coming in and the failure of the US and the UK and Europe to go in and stop ISIS when they were slaughtering Iraqis. The same in Syria. They were more angry that we didn't help then than the invasion in 2003 in Iraq, which tells you a lot, you know. And many of the people that end up here, the question that Shabana Mahmood puts, that you could be sent back after, I think, 2.5 years if it's safe, many of those refugees would want to go back given the chance.
Yeah, but they often don't. I mean, we haven't got to any other topics. This does not surprise me. Quite a lot of people want to have their say on the phone lines. That's absolutely for sure. Let me just mention also, just say we've got Kemi Badenoch. She's giving a pre-budget news conference right now, and she is talking about the next budget and saying that Rachel Reeves will talk about the wicked Tories, the black hole in the public finances. So she's going to claims that basically Rachel Reeves is going to put up people's taxes, spend more money on benefits. I mean, that is absolutely true. She's calling on the government to use their plan to make £47 billion of savings, including slashing £23 billion from the welfare bill, and says if this Labour government scraps the two-child benefit cap, as has been strongly hinted, Kemi Badenoch says, I want people to know that a future Conservative government will bring it back. I'd certainly support that. I've had some rows on and off there with Nigel Farage about that, because I think they're insane on that. But Nigel Farage, at the current time, with Zia Youssef, his policy chief, is unveiling his plan to deal with the budget black hole, and he's saying they can fill it in part with a massive cut to foreign aid to just £1 billion a year. I think it's 14 or 15 at the moment, down to £1 billion a year. I've got to be honest with you, very popular with voters, that one.
Well, I think it, needless to say, I think it would be wrong. And actually, I think it relates to what we just said, right? You know, our international development serves two purposes. One is hopefully to stabilise some of these areas where there's sort of deep poverty, you know, disease and war. And so actually, is it not going to lead to more people trying to flee if those countries don't get international aid from us in the US, which is heavily cut?
But it's who gets the aid, isn't it? We know kleptocratic governments tend to take an awful lot of it. It's a lot of NGOs. I mean, you know, highly paid executives. Everyone's on today. I mean, you know, does much of this aid actually go to the people who really need it? And often when we're giving aid to countries like, you know, Pakistan, or we're giving country India, I mean, they can afford nuclear programs and they can afford, you know, send rockets to the moon. What on earth are we doing giving aid to their people?
But then, well, because
what's it got to do with us?
But I think there's a massive self-interest in doing it, because you see China with its Belt and Road Initiative, in which it's lending money and helping people build infrastructure in Africa, in Southeast Asia, in the Caribbean.
It's putting everyone on the payroll, so they'll do their bidding.
Exactly.
Well, we should do that. No,
it's quite cynical. It's strategic, and I think it's probably
It's not quite cynical. It's very deliberately cynical. It's very, 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 very dark. We should have been doing the same rather than going, oh, here's some money for some K-pop band or something.